The crisis in India is becoming more devastating by the hour, with more than 200,000 lives claimed by COVID, more than 360,000 new infections in just the last 24 hours, breaking the global record for a single day. And this video overnight really tells the tragic story. Makeshift crematoriums line the streets, a desperate effort to lay to rest India's ever-increasing dead. The pandemic is now projected to kill another 600,000 people there by August. Researchers actually think the death toll is twice what is currently being reported. Google CEO Sundar Pichai was born in India, raised there, tweeted that he is devastated by this crisis. The company has thousands of employees there, and they're now pledging $18 million in new assistance to India, cash grants for families, funding for UNICEF, urgent medical supplies, including oxygen. Joining us now exclusively is a Google CEO and the CEO of the parent company Alphabet, Sundar Pichai. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
It's personal for you. You've got a lot of close family members there. And I just wonder if we could step back, because now you're here and you're living the American dream and you're vaccinated, and any American over 16 can get vaccinated. And I wonder what it's like for you to be in this position and then look at what's happening in the country you love.
The situation there is dire, and it's been heartbreaking to see. And I think there are the worst is yet to come. What's been heartening, at least being here, is definitely seeing the attention here. I realize that at the highest levels, from President Biden, Secretary Blinken, there's been focus on engaging to see how we can help India and the other countries being affected. And particularly over the last weekend, in an unprecedented way, more than 100 CEOs, the U.S. Chamber, the Business Roundtable, and the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum came together with the administration to mobilize and do our part to help. So that's been good to see, and India deserves our attention right now.
India deserves their attention right now, and you think the worst is still to come. I know you met with Secretary Blinken. Dr. Ashish Jha, also an Indian American, said only the United States has the capacity, resources, and technological know-how to bend India's catastrophic second wave of disease. What more did you tell Secretary Blinken you want the Biden administration to do?
I think there was a lot of focus on making sure anything we can do to increase vaccine production and supply, is being mobilized, helping with oxygen concentrators and supplies. And then different companies have different capabilities, and the U.S. government has its unique capabilities. From our side, we are really focused on providing the most helpful information. There are 600 million people connected to the internet, and they're really looking for information about vaccine and testing. And so working with the Ministry of Health in India, making sure we can get the right information on the ground has been a big focus for us, as well as partnering with the NGOs and public health organizations to get the messaging out. And it's important when people are able to stay home and mask and and stay safe. And so we are helping get the message out in partnership.
On the first issue that you just mentioned, Sundar, which is vaccine supply, the U.S. will send its AstraZeneca vaccine, some of it, to India when the FDA gives the green light on that. But there's also the question of the intellectual property, as you know, the recipe for these vaccines. And India asked the World Trade Organization 6 months ago to waive that IP protection. And the U.S. has not voted and not raised its hand supporting a waiver like that. A lot of experts, including the congressman that represents your district, Ro Khanna, believe the U.S. should support that, believe that would help India. Do you believe that IP waiver should be granted?
Well, two things. I was more involved in the conversations around, providing raw materials, supply access so that India can continue manufacturing its vaccines. I'm not familiar enough around the issues around IP protections for vaccines to weigh in on them. I was very encouraged by the U.S. announcement for the 60 million AstraZeneca doses to India and other countries. And this pandemic will involve us tackling it globally. And while as in the U.S. we are very fortunate, we need to work hard over the next months to make sure we can get as much vaccine supply around the world as possible.
When I look at the numbers in what is now Chennai, India, right, where you were born, I mean, they're expecting over 1 million cases there. Yesterday alone, 4,600 positive cases. You've talked about companies having, in your words, a sense of responsibility to society in this moment. What is your call to corporate America, companies as big as Google and small companies? What can they do that will make a meaningful difference to the people in India?
I think a couple of things. For me, most companies there now have a presence and, in fact, have employees that are contributing to the U.S. economy here. I think, taking the expertise in your company where you can and being ready to help in a coordinated way is going to be helpful. The second is, where possible, to provide cash and other resources directly to organizations on the ground. I think can make a big difference. And you mentioned Chennai, it's where I grew up and where my extended family is. And I think the impact is pretty dire. But, India is a very resilient country, and I see people being resourceful and doing everything they can to cope up.
I want to talk about the Modi government and the handling of this pandemic. Have you spoken to Prime Minister Modi?
I've been in touch with Prime Minister Modi at other times, not in the context of this situation.
I ask because there are members of his party that still this morning are announcing plans to continue carrying on these big rallies, which contributed in part to this, these big political rallies ahead of the election. What is your assessment this morning of the Modi government's handling of this? Any message to anyone there who will listen, if you think it's just going to get worse from here?
Well, look, we've been, in our interactions as a company, there's definitely a focus on what can be done to help the pandemic. I think if you look around the world, COVID has been humbling in the sense that, when you think you're on top of it, there can be a surge back. I think, encouraging good public safety measures and paying attention to the crisis is the only thing you can do in the short term. And, that's the effort I'm seeing. And as a company, we stand by ready to help.
India's government just on Sunday ordered some of your fellow big tech companies, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, to take down posts that were critical of the Modi government's handling of this crisis, of the COVID crisis. I know in the past the government has come to Google to ask it to take things off its platforms. Have they done this now, this request? Has the Modi government requested that Google take down any posts, any YouTube videos critical of their handling? And if not, would Google remove that if the request comes?
Normally we do comply with local laws, particularly in democratic countries, which through their norms and processes have passed laws. I do think one of India's strengths is its deeply rooted democratic tradition, based in freedom of expression and allowing for a diversity of viewpoints, and that's a strength. And
but not
as
here.
A company, we construct.
Not with this request,
as a company,
right?
We haven't had any requests, and in the past we've been able to work constructively with governments around the world, and we'll continue that approach here.
Okay. Let me ask you this final question. As you know, the World Health Organization has called it an infodemic, the misinformation that has been spread around the world about COVID, and it's been spread on Google's platforms and all of your competitors' platforms. Is this the biggest misinformation crisis that Google has had to fight?
It definitely was one of the most important efforts we had. I would say on this, given there is clear authoritative sources you can point to around the world, both news organizations as well as public health organizations, the local health organizations, for example, in the US CDC, WHO worldwide, and local government authorities, we've been able to raise that information. So, for example, in YouTube alone, we have shown COVID-related information panels 400 billion times. So I think it's an area where, because it's around health and we can point to authoritative resources, we've been able to tackle it head on and get the important messaging out there. But having said that, we've had to remove videos related to misinformation. YouTube alone, we've removed almost approaching 1 million misleading videos, and the work is ongoing, but we are all very committed to doing it right.
Sundar Pichai, thank you for joining us, and we will keep shining a light on India.